17 housekeepers fled Blackwood Manor, broken by the haunting art of two 6-year-old girls. In Boston's shadowy Brookline, Julian Vance, a 31-year-old widower and art prodigy, fights to save his fractured world. Haunted by his wife Eleanor's death, he's losing his twin daughters, Lily and Rose, to their silent rebellion. Dolls with missing eyes, crimson scrawls like blood. Enter Grace Holloway, a mysterious art therapist who sees their chaos as a cry for help. Tell us where and when you're listening, and subscribe to uncover her secret. Can Grace heal their wounds, or will the Manor's shadows prevail? The grand piano in Blackwood Manor's drawing room wailed a single discordant note, slicing through the midnight silence like a scream. Julian Vance froze mid-step in his upstairs studio, the sound curling around his heart like a cold hand. At 31, Julian was a man sculpted by grief and genius. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair streaked with premature gray, and eyes that burned with the restless intensity of an artist who'd traded dreams for duty. His white skin caught the moonlight filtering through the Gothic arched windows of the Brookline estate, a sprawling relic of Boston's old money that now felt more like a tomb than a home. He'd transformed the family gallery into a beacon of the city's art scene, rubbing shoulders with curators at the Institute of Contemporary Art. But no accolade could quiet the chaos consuming his life. 2 years ago, Eleanor, his wife, a painter with golden hair and a spirit that lit up canvases like summer, had died in a car crash, leaving Julian a widower at 29. Their twin daughters, Lily and Rose, only 6 years old, had become strangers to him. The girls, white with porcelain skin, wide blue eyes, and identical blonde curls, were no longer the giggling sprites who danced to Eleanor's laughter. Now they moved through the manor like ghosts, their grief spilling out in ways that baffled and terrified. No housekeeper could endure them. 17 had come and gone in 6 months, each fleeing with tales of psychological torment disguised as child's play. Julian descended the creaking staircase, the piano's echo lingering like a warning. In the foyer, he found the latest casualty, Margaret, a sturdy white woman in her 50s, a former nurse with a no-nonsense air that had promised resilience. Her suitcase sat packed by the door, her face ashen under the chandelier's dim glow. "Mr. Vance, I can't stay," she whispered, her voice trembling as if confessing a sin. "Those girls, they're not right." Julian's heart sank, but he pressed. "What happened, Margaret? You said you could handle them." He fumbled for a checkbook, his hands shaking, not from anger, but from the weight of failure. Margaret's eyes darted to the shadows, as if expecting the twins to materialize. "Yesterday, I found my clothes shredded into ribbons, hung like some art installation in my room. And this morning, the bathroom mirror, covered in red crayon, dripping like blood, with words scratched into it. 'Leave,' it said. And at night, that piano plays itself, notes all wrong, like something's mocking me." Julian signed the check, his signature jagged. "They're 6, Margaret. They're just grieving." But his voice wavered. He knew their acts weren't mere pranks. The girls had turned the manor into a canvas, their pain splattered in eerie, deliberate strokes. Dolls with missing eyes arranged in silent circles, crimson scrawls that seemed to pulse in the dark, faint whispers from empty rooms. Each housekeeper described the same dread, as if the manor itself conspired with the twins. Margaret clutched the check, her knuckles white. "Grieving or not, I've seen war zones less unsettling. I'm sorry, Mr. Vance." She glanced at the staircase where Lily and Rose stood, their blonde curls glowing faintly in the moonlight, faces angelic yet unreadable. "Goodbye, Margaret," Lily called, her voice soft as a lullaby. "We'll miss you," Rose echoed, a perfect mirror. Margaret shuddered and hurried out, the heavy oak door slamming like a final judgment. Julian turned to his daughters, their blue eyes meeting his with a quiet defiance that chilled him. "Girls, we need to talk," he said, kneeling to their level, his voice fraying. "This can't go on. 17 housekeepers. Why?" Lily tilted her head, a doll-like gesture. "They don't belong here, Daddy," she said simply. Rose nodded, clutching her sister's hand. "They don't understand us. Or Mommy. The mention of Eleanor pierced Julian like a blade. He saw her in their faces, in the way they moved, but also in the sealed studio upstairs, where her unfinished canvases gathered dust. He'd locked it after her death, unable to face her vibrant legacy when his own felt so hollow. He'd envied her art, its raw, unapologetic freedom, while he played the polished gallerist, curating others' dreams. That envy had crept into their marriage, small arguments over her impractical passion, and now it fueled his guilt. Had he pushed her away before the crash? The question gnawed at him, unanswered. "Girls, I know you miss her," he said, his throat tight. "I do too. But this isn't helping." Lily's eyes glistened, but she turned away. "We don't need them," Rose whispered, her voice fierce for a 6-year-old. "We have each other." They slipped upstairs, leaving Julian alone in the foyer, the Manor's silence pressing against him like a weight. He retreated to his studio, where a half-finished sketch of Eleanor lay abandoned. Her eyes, rendered in charcoal, seemed to accuse him, not of her death, but of his failure to reach their daughters. The twins' disruptions always circled her studio, as if guarding a secret. The dolls, the crayon streaks, the piano's eerie notes. They weren't random. They were a language, one he couldn't speak. He thought of the last housekeeper before Margaret, who'd fled after finding a doll with her name pinned to it, surrounded by red scribbles. "It's like they're protecting something," she'd said. Julian's phone buzzed, a message from a university colleague, Professor Lang, who'd heard of his plight. "I know someone," the text read. "Not a housekeeper, but an art therapist. She's unconventional, but she might understand your girls. Her name's Grace Holloway." Julian stared at the name, a flicker of hope battling his exhaustion. He'd built an empire on art, yet his daughter's creations were tearing it apart. Could this Grace decipher their silent screams? As he climbed to bed, the Manor groaned, its timbers settling like a restless spirit. He passed Eleanor's studio, the locked door a silent rebuke. Inside, he imagined her paints, her brushes, her unfinished works, relics of a life cut short. The twins' chaos was their way of keeping her close, he realized, but it was also pushing him away. He needed someone who could bridge that gap, someone who could face the Manor's shadows without running. In the distance, the piano struck another note, sharp and fleeting, as if the girls were already planning their next act. Julian's heart raced. Whatever secret they guarded, it was tearing his family apart. Would Grace Holloway be the one to stay, or would Blackwood Manor claim her too? The echo of the grand piano's discordant note lingered in Julian Vance's mind as he stood in Blackwood Manor's cavernous foyer, the weight of Margaret's departure still pressing against his chest. The 17th housekeeper in 6 months gone, her final words, "Your girls aren't right," ringing like a verdict. At 31, Julian's sharp features were etched deeper by exhaustion, his gray-streaked hair a testament to the grief that had aged him since Eleanor's death 2 years ago. The twins Lily and Rose, only 6, had turned the Gothic estate in Boston's Brookline into a battlefield. Their eerie art, dolls with missing eyes, crimson crayon streaks like blood, driving away every caretaker. Their creations guarded something in Eleanor's sealed studio, a secret Julian couldn't grasp, and his guilt over envying her artistic freedom gnawed at him, whispering he'd failed her and their daughters. The morning sun barely pierced the Manor's heavy drapes as a sharp knock shattered the silence. Julian opened the oak door to find Victoria Hargrove, Eleanor's younger sister, sweeping in like a storm cloaked in Chanel. A white woman in her mid-30s, Victoria's platinum blonde hair was immaculate, her makeup flawless, her smile a polished weapon honed in Boston's charity circles. She carried a basket of artisanal pastries, her voice dripping with saccharine concern. "Julian, darling, you look dreadful," she cooed, setting the basket on a mahogany table. "I'm here to help you and those precious girls." Her green eyes, sharp as cut glass, flicked toward the staircase where Lily and Rose peeked, their blonde curls framing wary blue gazes. Julian forced a smile, his stomach twisting. Victoria had always been a fixture at galas, her name tied to fundraisers at venues like the Institute of Contemporary Art. But her help felt like an intrusion. "We're managing, Victoria," he said, his voice strained. "Just adjusting." She waved a manicured hand, dismissing his words. Nonsense, I know about the housekeepers. 17? Honestly, Julian, you need family now. She leaned closer, her perfume cloying. Let's honor Eleanor's legacy. A charity auction, right here in her studio. Her art could raise millions for the Children's Hospital. I'll handle everything. The proposal landed like a spark in dry grass. Eleanor's studio, locked since her death, was sacred to the twins. Its door a barrier their disruptions seemed to protect. Julian hesitated, his mind flashing to the twins' latest act. A circle of eyeless dolls in Margaret's room, a child's cry woven into terror. I don't know, Victoria. The girl, they're sensitive about the studio. Her smile tightened, but her voice stayed honeyed. They're 6, Julian. They need guidance, not coddling. Let me open the space. Make it live again. Before he could respond, a crash echoed from the hallway. A pitcher of orange juice, deliberately tipped, pooling across Victoria's path. Her pristine heels sank into the sticky mess, and she gasped, her facade cracking. Those children, she snapped, glaring at the twins, who stood at the corridor's end, their faces blank but their eyes glinting with defiance. Sorry, Aunt Victoria, Lily said, her voice too sweet. It slipped, Rose added, clutching her sister's hand. Julian knelt to clean the spill, his heart racing. This wasn't an accident. It was a warning, as deliberate as the crayon streaks or the piano's midnight wails. Victoria dabbed her shoes with a handkerchief, her composure returning like a mask. They need discipline, Julian. But don't worry, I'll win them over. She flashed a smile, but Julian caught a flicker of calculation in her eyes, a hunger that unsettled him. He didn't know her secret. Victoria was drowning in debt from reckless investments, her charity persona a front. Her plan was to auction Eleanor's art, swapping originals for forgeries to sell on the black market, pocketing millions to save herself. The studio was her prize, and the twins' chaos was an obstacle she'd crush. That afternoon, Julian found the girls in their playroom, surrounded by scattered crayons and torn paper. Their latest creation chilled him, a wall scrawled with jagged black figures, their forms twisted as if fleeing something. The piano downstairs struck a single off-key note, like a heartbeat skipping. Girls, he said softly, kneeling, why did you spill the juice? Lily's eyes met his, fierce for a 6-year-old. She wants Mommy's room. We won't let her. Rose nodded, clutching a doll missing one eye. It's ours, Mommy's. Julian's throat tightened. He saw Eleanor in their stubbornness, her passion for art that he'd envied, resenting its hold over her when he'd been chained to the gallery's demands. That envy had sparked arguments, small wounds he now regretted. I miss her too, he said, his voice breaking. But we can't keep scaring people away. The girls exchanged a glance, silent, their bond a fortress he couldn't breach. We don't need anyone else, Rose whispered, and they turned back to their crayons, shutting him out. Victoria's visits grew frequent, each one darkening the twins' art. One evening, Julian found a new drawing taped to the studio door, a crude, childlike figure of a woman with platinum hair, her face scratched out in red. The piano's notes grew more frantic, a child's attempt at menace. Julian's doubts solidified. Victoria's presence was a catalyst, stirring the girls' protective instincts. But what were they guarding? The studio held Eleanor's unfinished works. But was there more? His colleague's text about Grace Holloway, the art therapist, burned in his pocket. She's unconventional, Professor Lang had written. She might understand. As Victoria outlined auction plans over coffee, her enthusiasm polished but hollow, Julian's unease grew. She spoke of Eleanor's legacy, but avoided his eyes, her fingers lingering on a necklace, a twin-to-one Eleanor had worn, now lost. Was it coincidence or something darker? The twins' disruptions weren't just grief. They were a defense against this woman who claimed family, but felt like a thief. That night, Julian stood outside the studio, the locked door a silent challenge. The piano struck another note, sharp and fleeting, as if the Manor itself was watching. He needed Grace Holloway, not just to save his daughters, but to uncover the truth Victoria threatened to bury. The air in Blackwood Manor hung heavy with the residue of Victoria Hargrove's latest visit. Her saccharine promises of a charity auction, cloaking a greed that Julian Vance could no longer ignore. The Gothic estate in Boston's Brookline, with its arched windows and creaking timbers, seemed to pulse with unease, as if the walls themselves sensed the twins' defiance. At 31, Julian, a white man with sharp features and gray-streaked hair, stood outside Eleanor's sealed studio, the door a silent sentinel of his late wife's legacy. His daughters, 6-year-old Lily and Rose, had escalated their eerie art, eyeless dolls, crimson crayon streaks, and the grand piano's midnight wails, targeting Victoria's intrusion with a child's fierce precision. Their latest drawing, a red-scratched figure of their aunt, screamed of a secret they guarded, one Julian couldn't decipher. His guilt, rooted in envying Eleanor's artistic freedom, gnawed deeper, whispering he'd failed to bridge the chasm between him and his girls. A crisp autumn breeze swept through the Manor's open door as Grace Holloway arrived, her footsteps soft but deliberate on the polished floor. A white woman of 29, her auburn hair tied back in a practical ponytail, her green eyes sharp with a mix of curiosity and caution. Grace carried no housekeeper's tools, only a canvas bag of sketch pads and paints. An art therapist on sabbatical from a children's hospital, she bore her own scars. The loss of her younger sister in a car accident, a wound that made her hesitate to take this job, fearing another failure with a grieving family. Julian, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights and Victoria's relentless auction plans, met her in the foyer. 17 housekeepers in 6 months, he said, his voice fraying. Lily and Rose sabotage with art, dolls, crayons, piano notes. They're guarding Eleanor's studio, especially from my sister-in-law. She wants to auction my wife's work, but it's tearing us apart. Grace's gaze traced the foyer, landing on a faint crayon smudge, a jagged line like a child's cry. The distant echo of the piano's last note seemed to linger, a ghostly thread tying the twins' chaos to their pain. She set down her bag, her voice steady despite the flicker of her own grief. Mr. Vance, your daughters aren't making a mess. They're communicating. No one speaks their language. Let me try. The words landed like a lifeline, cutting through the Manor's oppressive silence. Julian, clutching the hope from Professor Lang's recommendation, nodded. You're not what I expected, he admitted. Grace's lips curved slightly. Good. Expectations get in the way. She confessed softly as if testing the air. My sister died young, in a crash like Eleanor's. Art helped me survive, but I've doubted my work since losing a patient. I hesitated coming here, but I see something in your girl's chaos. Her vulnerability mirrored Julian's own, a shared fracture that made him trust her instantly. She didn't touch the latest installation, a tangle of yarn strung like a spider's web across the studio door, a 6-year-old's fortress. Instead, she knelt, photographing it with her phone, her fingers brushing the threads as if reading Braille. This isn't random, she murmured. It's a barrier, protecting something sacred. Upstairs, Lily and Rose watched from the shadows of the staircase, their blonde curls catching the dim light, blue eyes wary but curious. Grace sensed their presence, her therapist's instinct sharp. She didn't call them down or demand obedience. Instead, she opened her bag, placing a box of vibrant crayons and a sketch pad on the foyer table, a silent invitation. I'm not here to clean, she said loudly enough for them to hear, her tone warm but firm. I'm here to listen. Julian watched, his chest tightening with a mix of hope and doubt. Could this woman, a stranger, reach his daughters where he'd failed? Victoria's shadow loomed, her auction plans a ticking clock. That morning she'd left a voicemail, her voice syrupy. Julian, the gala's set for next month. Boston's elite are thrilled. Let's open the studio soon. Julian hadn't responded, haunted by the twins' drawing of her, its red scratches a child's accusation. Grace noticed his tension. Your sister-in-law, she said, not a question. She's part of this, isn't she? Julian nodded, his voice low. She's family, but I don't trust her. The girls don't either. They're protecting something in that studio, but I don't know what. Grace's eyes flicked to the studio door, then back to the yarn web. They're not just grieving Eleanor, they're guarding her truth. Let's find out why. She moved to the drawing room where faint piano notes had sounded the night before, now silent but heavy with intent. She found a small drawing tucked under a cushion, a crude sketch of a necklace, its shape distinct, sparkling in a child's exaggerated lines. It stirred a memory Julian couldn't place, a piece of Eleanor's he'd seen but dismissed. Grace held it up. This means something. They're trying to tell us. That evening, as Julian lit candles to ward off the manor's gloom, the twins crept downstairs, drawn by Grace's quiet presence. They didn't speak, but Rose's fingers brushed the crayons, her eyes flicking to Grace's calm face. Lily clutched the doll, its single eye staring blankly. Grace sat cross-legged on the floor, sketching a simple tree, her strokes deliberate. "I used to draw when I missed my sister," she said softly, not looking at them. It helped the hurt come out. The twins exchanged a glance, their fortress cracking. Rose picked up a red crayon, scribbling a jagged line beside Grace's tree. A response, tentative but real. Julian watched from the doorway, his heart aching. He remembered arguing with Eleanor over her art, calling it impractical while he chased gallery success. Now seeing Grace connect with his daughters through the same medium, he felt the sting of his failure anew. "They haven't drawn with anyone since her," he whispered. Grace nodded, her eyes on Rose's scribble. "They're starting to trust, but we need to move slowly. Victoria's pushing them too hard." As night fell, the piano struck a single, soft note, less menacing now, almost questioning. Grace left the sketch pad open, her tree joined by the twins' jagged lines. A conversation begun. Julian felt a spark of hope, but Victoria's auction loomed, a threat to the fragile bridge Grace was building. What secret did the twins' art hide? And could Grace uncover it before the manor's shadows and Victoria's greed swallowed them whole? The faint echo of a single piano note hung in Blackwood Manor's air, softer now, as if the house itself were holding its breath. In the dim light of the drawing room, Julian Vance stood frozen, watching Grace Holloway's quiet presence weave a fragile thread to his 6-year-old twins, Lily and Rose. The white art therapist, her auburn hair catching the flicker of candlelight, had sparked something in the girls that Julian, at 31, had failed to reach. Their eerie creations, eyeless dolls, crimson crayon streaks, jagged figures scratched on walls, had driven off 17 housekeepers, guarding a secret in Eleanor's sealed studio. Victoria Hargrove's looming charity auction, a thinly veiled scheme to plunder Eleanor's art for profit, had intensified the twins' rebellion, their latest drawing of her scratched-out face a child's desperate warning. Grace's words, "They're communicating, let me try," had ignited a spark of hope, and now as Rose's small hand clutched a red crayon beside Grace's sketch of a tree, Julian sensed a shift, a crack in the twins' fortress. Grace, 29, sat cross-legged on the Persian rug, her green eyes soft but focused, the weight of her own loss, a sister gone in a crash like Eleanor's, guiding her steady hand. The Manor's Gothic halls, nestled in Boston's Brookline, seemed to lean in, the distant piano's question lingering. She didn't push the twins, their porcelain skin and blonde curls glowing faintly as they hovered near her sketch pad. Lily clutched the doll, its single eye staring blankly, while Rose's jagged red line beside Grace's tree marked their first response. "When I missed my sister," Grace said, her voice a gentle hum, "I drew her favorite flowers. It made her feel closer." Rose's eyes flicked up, curious but guarded, her small fingers tightening on the crayon. Julian, his sharp features taut with exhaustion, leaned against the doorway, his gray-streaked hair falling into his eyes. Guilt gnawed at him. His envy of Eleanor's free-spirited art had driven a wedge between them. Arguments he now regretted as he struggled to connect with their daughters. Grace's approach, wordless yet profound, was unlocking something he couldn't. He whispered, "They haven't let anyone this close since her." Grace nodded, her pencil tracing a leaf. "They're scared to trust, but they're talking through this." She tapped the sketch pad where Lily had now added a black smudge, a shapeless cloud beside Rose's line. The twins' art had always been a language of pain, but Grace treated it as a dialogue. She left a box of bright crayons and fresh paper by a new installation, a pile of broken toys arranged in a spiral, their missing eyes replaced with buttons, a 6-year-old's attempt at menace. The next morning she found a drawing in return, A crude house under a stormy sky, two stick figures with blonde curls holding hands. A third figure, taller, with auburn hair, standing apart. Julian, seeing it, felt a pang. "That's you," he said, his voice thick. Grace's lips curved, but her eyes held a flicker of her own fear. Her sister's death had left her wary of attachment, yet these girls were pulling her in. "They're testing me," Grace said, studying the drawing. "They want to know if I'll stay." She added a sun to the sketch pad, bright yellow, and left it for them. That afternoon, the twins responded. A small rainbow arced over the house, shaky but vivid. Julian's heart lifted, but Victoria's shadow loomed. Her latest visit had left a new voicemail. "Julian, the gala's gaining traction. We'll need the studio open by next week." The twins, sensing her push, had taped a drawing to the studio door. A necklace, its gem exaggerated in green crayon, unmistakably like one Eleanor wore. One Victoria claimed was lost. Grace's eyes narrowed. "They're pointing to something specific. This necklace, it's important." That evening, as candles cast dancing shadows, Grace sat with the twins in the playroom, the air thick with the scent of wax and crayons. The piano was silent, but the Manor's creaks felt alive, as if watching their tentative dance. Grace shared a story, her voice low. "When I was little, I hid drawings under my bed, afraid to show my hurt. But someone, a teacher, saw them and listened. It changed everything." Lily, clutching her doll, whispered, "We hide things too. For Mommy." Rose nodded, her eyes wide. "Aunt Victoria wants them, but they're ours." Julian, eavesdropping, felt a chill. The twins' words confirmed his suspicion. Victoria's charity was a lie, and the girls at 6 sensed it. Grace, catching his gaze, nodded slightly, her therapist's instinct sharp. "What did she want?" she asked gently. Rose hesitated, then whispered, "She gave me candy to see Mommy's room. I said no." Lily's small hand gripped her sister's. "We don't let her in." Grace's heart ached, her own loss echoing in their defiance. "You're brave," she said, sketching a heart beside their rainbow. "You're keeping Mommy safe." The exchange cracked the twins' walls further. The next day, they left a new drawing. The necklace again, now with a hidden figure peeking from behind a curtain, its face blank but menacing. Grace recognized the pattern. Each sketch was a clue, a child's plea to protect Eleanor's legacy. Julian, watching Grace pin the drawing to a board, confessed, "I argued with Eleanor about her art. I called it impractical. I pushed her away, and now I'm losing them." His voice broke, the weight of his guilt spilling out. Grace touched his arm, her own scars surfacing. "I lost a patient once. Thought I'd failed her like my sister. But you're here trying. That's enough to start." As night cloaked the manor, the twins crept to Grace's sketch pad, adding two small figures beside her heart, their curls unmistakable. The piano struck a soft, clear note, no longer discordant, as if the house approved. Julian, seeing the drawing, felt tears prick his eyes. Grace was building a bridge, but Victoria's auction was days away, her greed a ticking bomb. The necklace in the twins' art hinted at a deeper truth, one tied to Eleanor's studio. Could Grace unlock it before Victoria's plans shattered their fragile progress? The manor held its breath, waiting. The soft, clear note of the grand piano lingered in Blackwood Manor's shadowed halls, a fragile truce in the storm of grief that bound Julian Vance and his 6-year-old twins, Lily and Rose. Grace Holloway, the white art therapist with auburn hair and piercing green eyes, had cracked the girls' fortress with her wordless sketches, their crayon drawings of a mysterious necklace, and hidden figures hinting at a secret tied to their mother Eleanor's sealed studio. At 31, Julian, his sharp features etched with exhaustion and gray-streaked hair, stood at a precipice. His sister-in-law, Victoria Hargrove's looming charity auction, a facade for her plan to swap Eleanor's paintings for forgeries, threatened to unravel the fragile trust Grace had built. The twins' latest drawing, a blank-faced figure lurking behind a curtain, echoed their whispered confession. Victoria had tried to bribe Rose with candy to access the studio, but they'd refused, protecting Mommy's things. Julian's guilt, Rooted in his past envy of Eleanor's unbound artistry, churned as he realized the girl's chaos was a shield for something deeper. Grace, her own loss, a sister taken in a car crash, mirroring the family's pain, sensed the necklace was the key. In the Manor's drawing room, where candlelight danced on Boston's Brookline gloom, she knelt beside the twins, their blonde curls glowing, blue eyes wide with trust. "You said Mommy's things are in the studio," Grace said gently, her voice a balm. "Can you show me?" Lily clutched her one-eyed doll, hesitating, then nodded. Rose whispered, "It's her picture, the sad one." Julian, watching from the doorway, felt his heart lurch. Eleanor's studio, locked since her death 2 years ago, was a wound he'd avoided, its contents a reminder of his failure to cherish her art while she lived. The twins led Grace upstairs, their small hands gripping hers, the Manor's timbers creaking as if urging caution. Julian followed, his pulse quickening as they approached the studio door, its brass knob cold under his touch. Inside, dust motes swirled in slants of light, the air thick with the scent of dried paint and memory. Canvases leaned against walls, Eleanor's vibrant strokes frozen in time. The twins pointed to a somber self-portrait, Eleanor's white face etched in melancholy, her golden hair muted, her eyes staring through the canvas as if pleading. "That's Mommy's secret," Lily said, her voice small but certain. Rose nodded. "We didn't let Aunt Victoria see." Grace's therapist's eye caught irregularities in the paint, uneven layers, a subtle sheen. She turned to Julian, her voice steady despite the echo of her own grief. "This is pentimento, repentance in art. She painted over something." Julian frowned, his mind flashing to the twins' necklace drawings, identical to one Eleanor wore, one Victoria claimed was lost. "Can you uncover it?" he asked, his throat tight. Grace nodded, her fingers trembling slightly. She'd restored paintings before, but this felt personal, like exhuming her sister's memory. "With your permission," she said. Julian swallowed, nodding. "Do it." Grace worked carefully, her tools scraping softly, a rhythmic counterpoint to the Manor's silence. The twins sat cross-legged, watching, their dolls forgotten. Julian stood by, his guilt surfacing. He'd argued with Eleanor over her impractical art, resenting its hold on her, while he chased gallery success. Now her canvas might hold answers he'd ignored. As layers peeled away, a radiant Eleanor emerged, her smile bright, her eyes alive. She wore the necklace, a sapphire pendant, unmistakable. Julian's breath caught. He remembered Victoria wearing it once, claiming it was a gift, then saying it vanished. "She lied," he whispered, anger rising. Grace's hands stilled as she found something else. Behind the canvas, tucked in a hidden fold, was a packet of documents. Bank statements, charity fund records, scrawled notes in Eleanor's hand. Julian scanned them, his face paling. "Victoria's been stealing," he said, his voice raw. "She embezzled thousands from the family's charity fund. Eleanor must have found out before." He trailed off, the crash that took her flashing in his mind. Grace's eyes met his, her own loss tightening her chest. "She hid this to protect you all," she said softly. The girls knew it was important, even if they didn't understand. Lily's small voice broke the silence. "We saw Aunt Victoria looking at Mommy's picture. She wanted it." Rose nodded, clutching Lily's hand. "We made scary things to keep her away." Their childlike logic hit Julian like a blow. They'd turned the Manor into a fortress, their art a 6-year-old's war against betrayal. Grace knelt, her voice gentle. "You were so brave. You kept Mommy's secret safe." Tears welled in their blue eyes, the first crack in their stoic facade since Eleanor's death. Julian's hands shook as he held the documents, his guilt morphing into resolve. Victoria's auction, set for days away, wasn't just greed. It was a cover to erase Eleanor's truth. "She's selling forgeries," he said, his voice hard. "She's betraying Eleanor's memory." Grace's green eyes burned with quiet fire. "Then we stop her. At the gala?" The twins nodded, their small faces fierce, their trust in Grace a lifeline Julian clung to. He saw Eleanor in their defiance, her passion alive in their courage, and regretted ever resenting it. As they left the studio, the piano downstairs struck a single clear note, as if Eleanor approved. Grace pinned the twins' latest drawing, the necklace, the lurking figure, to her board, a map of their pain and protection. Julian felt a surge of purpose, but fear lingered. Victoria's gala would draw Boston's elite, a stage for her lies. Could they expose her before she dismantled their family's legacy? The Manor's shadows deepened, the necklace's sapphire glinting in his mind, a beacon leading to a reckoning. The air in Blackwood Manor thrummed with tension, as if the Gothic estate in Boston's Brookline sensed the storm about to break. Julian Vance, his sharp features taut and gray-streaked hair disheveled, clutched the damning documents unearthed from Eleanor's self-portrait, their weight heavier than the canvas itself. At 31, the widower and art prodigy stood on the edge of a reckoning, his guilt over envying his late wife's unbound creativity now fueling a fierce resolve. The twins, 6-year-old Lily and Rose, their porcelain skin and blonde curls glowing in the candlelit studio, had guarded their mother's secret with eerie art, eyeless dolls, crimson crayon streaks, and haunting piano notes. Grace Holloway, the white art therapist with auburn hair and green eyes, had decoded their silent cries, revealing Victoria Hargrove's betrayal. Her charity auction was a facade to sell forged paintings, hiding her embezzlement from the family fund. The sapphire necklace in Eleanor's restored portrait, claimed lost by Victoria, was the key, and tonight's gala would be the stage to expose her. The Manor's halls, once shadowed by grief, glittered under chandeliers as Boston's elite, white men in tuxedos, women in shimmering gowns, mingled amid Eleanor's displayed works. Victoria, her platinum hair gleaming, moved through the crowd like a queen, her smile a perfect mask as she toasted Eleanor's legacy. Julian watched from the sidelines, his heart pounding, the documents and restored portrait hidden in his study. Grace stood beside him, her calm presence a lifeline, though her own loss, a sister taken in a crash, tightened her grip on his arm. "We have one shot," she whispered, her green eyes scanning the room. "She doesn't know we found the truth." Lily and Rose, dressed in matching blue dresses, clung to Grace, their blue eyes darting to Victoria. Their latest drawing, a blank-faced figure behind a curtain, had foreshadowed this moment, their childlike art a warning now realized. Julian knelt, his voice low. "You're safe now, girls. We'll protect Mommy's secret together." Lily's small hand squeezed his, a trust he hadn't felt since Eleanor's death. Rose whispered, "No more scary pictures?" Grace smiled softly. "Only happy ones from now on." Victoria took the stage, her voice honeyed as she addressed the crowd. "Tonight, we honor my sister, Eleanor Vance, by auctioning her masterpieces for Boston's Children's Hospital." The guests applauded, unaware of her plan to swap originals for forgeries, pocketing millions on the black market. Julian's blood boiled. Her lie desecrated Eleanor's memory, the sapphire necklace a stolen emblem of her integrity. He glanced at Grace, who nodded, her therapist's instinct sharp. She'd seen the twins' fear of Victoria, their art a shield against her greed. As Victoria gestured to a draped canvas, Julian stepped forward, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "Ladies and gentlemen, we honor Eleanor tonight, not with an auction, but with truth." The room fell silent, Victoria's smile faltering. He signaled to Grace, who wheeled out the restored self-portrait, Eleanor's radiant face glowing under the lights, the sapphire necklace vivid. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "This painting was hidden," Julian said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Beneath a layer of sorrow, Eleanor left us a message." He held up the documents, projecting them on a screen. Bank records, Eleanor's notes, proof of Victoria's theft from the family charity. Victoria's face drained of color, her polished facade cracking. "This is slander," she hissed, her eyes darting to the exits. Julian pressed on, his guilt transforming into strength. "You stole from our family's fund, Victoria. You lied about this necklace, claimed it was lost. Eleanor knew, and you planned to erase her truth with forgeries." The crowd murmured, phones flashing as guests recorded the unraveling drama. Grace stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Eleanor's art was her heart. You tried to sell it, but her daughters protected it. She gestured to Lily and Rose, who stood tall, their small faces fierce with pride. Security moved in, their steps heavy on the polished floor. Victoria's voice rose, desperate. You can't prove this. But the documents were irrefutable. Eleanor's handwriting a silent accusation. As guards escorted her out, her heels clicking frantically, the crowd erupted in whispers, Boston's elite witnessing her fall. Julian felt a weight lift, his envy of Eleanor's art replaced by awe at her foresight. She'd hidden the truth for her family, and the twins at 6 had guarded it with their chaotic creations. Grace knelt beside the girls, her auburn hair brushing their curls as they hugged her. You were so brave, she said, her voice thick with her own resurfacing grief. Lily whispered, Mommy's safe now? Rose added, No more bad lady? Julian joined them, his eyes wet. She's safe, and so are we. The piano, silent all evening, seemed to hum faintly, a clear note echoing Eleanor's presence. The gala dissolved into quiet chaos, guests departing with murmurs of shock and admiration. Julian and Grace stood in the now empty hall, the portrait glowing under a spotlight. You spoke their language, Julian said, his voice raw. I couldn't. Grace's green eyes met his, her own scars softening. You're learning. We all are. The twins' trust, forged through Grace's sketches, had led to this moment, but Julian knew the road ahead held more healing. His failure to cherish Eleanor's art haunted him, and Victoria's betrayal was only the beginning of mending their fractured family. As the Manor's chandeliers dimmed, the twins clutched their latest drawing, a simple heart, no longer jagged, with Eleanor's necklace at its center. Grace pinned it beside the portrait, a testament to their courage. The gala had exposed Victoria, but the deeper truth, the twins' pain, Julian's guilt, still waited. Could they rebuild from this wreckage, or would the Manor's shadows linger? The night held its breath, the piano's faint echo a promise of answers yet to come. The chandeliers of Blackwood Manor dimmed, their light fading like the echoes of the charity galas unraveling. Julian Vance stood in the now quiet hall, the restored portrait of his late wife Eleanor glowing under a single spotlight, her sapphire necklace a silent testament to her integrity. At 31, Julian's sharp features were softened by relief, his gray-streaked hair falling into eyes that held both triumph and lingering guilt. The exposure of Victoria Hargrove's embezzlement, her scheme to sell forged paintings unmasked by Eleanor's hidden documents, had freed the Manor from her shadow. Yet the victory was bittersweet. The twins, 6-year-old Lily and Rose, their porcelain skin and blonde curls catching the light, clung to Grace Holloway, their small hands gripping hers. Their art, eyeless dolls, crimson crayon streaks, haunting piano notes, had protected their mother's truth, but their grief, and Julian's, remained raw. Grace, the white art therapist with auburn hair and green eyes, had bridged their pain with sketches and trust, her own loss, a sister taken in a crash, mirroring their wounds. Now in Boston's Brookline, the Gothic estate held its breath, waiting for healing to begin. The morning after the gala, sunlight pierced the Manor's heavy drapes, a rarity in its shadowed halls. Julian gathered the twins in the drawing room, where Grace's sketchpad lay open, their latest drawing, a heart encircling Eleanor's necklace, pinned beside her portrait. The piano stood silent, its discordant wails replaced by a tentative peace. Julian knelt, his voice thick. You were so brave last night, girls. Mommy would be proud. Lily's blue eyes shimmered with tears. Is Aunt Victoria gone for good? Rose whispered, clutching her one-eyed doll. Will Mommy's picture stay safe? Grace, sitting cross-legged on the rug, nodded gently. She's gone, and Mommy's picture is safe, because of you. Her words, soft as the crayon strokes, carried the weight of her own healing, her sister's memory stirring as she spoke. Healing began slowly, like paint drying on a canvas. Grace led the twins in art sessions, their small hands wielding crayons to draw not monsters but flowers, suns, and shaky rainbows. The Manor's creaks softened, as if the house itself exhaled. Julian joined them, his guilt over envying Eleanor's art surfacing in halting confessions. "I used to tell your mom her paintings were impractical," he admitted one afternoon, his voice breaking as he sketched a tree beside Lily's scrawled cloud. "I was wrong. Her art was her heart, and you've kept it alive." Rose, her curls bouncing, added a yellow star. "Mommy loves stars," she said, her first open memory since the crash. Julian's eyes welled, seeing Eleanor in her smile. Grace, her green eyes reflecting her own quiet pain, shared her story during a session, her pencil tracing a river. "When my sister died, I drew rivers to let my tears flow somewhere safe. It hurt, but it helped." Her vulnerability cracked Julian's defenses further. That evening, as candlelight flickered, he confessed, "I pushed Eleanor away, resented her freedom. Now I'm afraid I'll lose the girls too." Grace's hand brushed his, a fleeting warmth. "You're here now, Julian. That's what matters. I was scared too. Losing my sister, then a patient, made me doubt I could help. But your girls are teaching me I can." Their eyes met, a spark of understanding igniting. Not yet love, but something close, rooted in shared scars. The twins' art shifted, their drawings brighter, less jagged, though doubts lingered. One rainy afternoon, Rose paused mid-sketch, her crayon hovering. "Did Aunt Victoria ruin Mommy's name?" she asked, her voice small. Lily nodded, her doll clutched tight. "What if people think Mommy was bad too?" Grace knelt, her auburn hair brushing their curls. "Your mom's name shines because you protected her truth. Every drawing you made kept her love alive." Julian added, "And we'll keep it alive, together." The girls exchanged a glance, their bond a fortress now opening to include him and Grace. The Manor's halls, once heavy with grief, began to echo with tentative giggles. Julian and Grace worked side by side, clearing the studio of dust, not to erase Eleanor, but to honor her. They hung her paintings, vibrant landscapes, tender portraits, alongside the twins' drawings, blending past and present. One night, as rain pattered against the Gothic windows, Julian found Grace in the studio, studying a sketch of the twins' heart. "They're healing," she said, her voice soft. "But it's slow. They need you to heal too." Julian's throat tightened. "I'm trying. I see her in them. And it hurts." Grace's hand found his, steady. "It's supposed to hurt. That's how you know it's real." Their bond deepened, late-night talks over coffee and sketches turning personal. Grace admitted her fear of attachment, her sister's loss a shadow that had kept her guarded. Julian shared memories of Eleanor's laughter, her dances with the girls, his regret for not joining them. Their hands brushed more often, lingering, a quiet affection growing from mutual understanding. The twins noticed Rose whispering to Lily, "Grace makes Daddy smile like Mommy did." Their approval, childlike and pure, warmed the Manor's cold corners. Yet the gala's fallout left scars. A local paper ran a story on Victoria's disgrace, and whispers of the Vance scandal reached the twins at school. Lily came home tearful, asking, "Why do people talk about us?" Julian, his heart breaking, hugged her. "Because they don't know our story. We'll show them who we are." Grace suggested a new project, a family mural to paint their truth. The twins dove in, their crayons dancing, creating a vibrant scene of a house under a rainbow, Eleanor's necklace at its heart. Julian added a tree, Grace a river, their strokes intertwining. As weeks passed, the Manor transformed, its halls no longer haunted but hopeful. The studio, once a shrine of pain, became a space of creation, its door now open. Julian felt Eleanor's presence, not as guilt but as love, guiding them forward. Grace, her own wounds softening, found purpose in the twins' smiles. But the true test lay ahead. Could they share this healing with others, turning their pain into a legacy? The piano struck a clear, hopeful note, as if Eleanor whispered yes. Sunlight streamed through Blackwood Manor's arched windows, bathing the Gothic estate in a warmth that felt like a new beginning. 6 months after the Charity Gala's seismic reckoning, the halls of the Brookline mansion no longer echoed with the discordant wails of a haunted piano or the weight of unspoken grief. Julian Vance, at 31, stood in the transformed drawing room, his sharp features softened, the gray streaks in his dark hair less stark against his renewed purpose. The exposure of Victoria Hargrove's embezzlement, her scheme to sell forged paintings, foiled by Eleanor's hidden documents and the twins' protective art, had lifted a shadow from the manor. Yet it was the slow, deliberate healing, led by Grace Holloway, the white art therapist with auburn hair and green eyes, that had woven Julian and his 6-year-old twins, Lily and Rose, into a family again. Their crayon drawings, once jagged cries of eyeless dolls and crimson streaks, now bloomed with rainbows and hearts. Eleanor's sapphire necklace, a recurring motif of their mother's enduring love. As Julian pinned their latest mural, a vibrant house under a starry sky, to the wall he felt Eleanor's presence, not as guilt for envying her art, but as a guiding light. The manor's once heavy air hummed with life as Grace and the twins prepared for the launch of the Eleanor Open Studio, a free art therapy space inspired by Boston's community art initiatives, like those at the Institute of Contemporary Art. The studio, once a sealed shrine to Eleanor's unfinished canvases, now stood open, its walls adorned with her vibrant landscapes and the twins' colorful sketches. Lily and Rose, their porcelain skin glowing, blonde curls bouncing, darted about, arranging crayons and paper for the first workshop. At 6, their confidence had blossomed, their blue eyes bright with purpose as they embraced their role as junior ambassadors. Grace, her own loss, a sister taken in a crash, softened by the twins' trust, oversaw the preparations, her green eyes sparkling with pride. Julian caught her gaze, their hands brushing as they set up easels, a quiet affection now woven into their daily rhythm, born from shared scars and late-night confessions. The workshop began on a crisp spring afternoon, the manor's doors flung wide to welcome grieving families, parents and children seeking solace in art, just as the Vances had. A shy boy, no older than 5, hesitated at an easel, his small hands trembling. Lily, her curls catching the sunlight, knelt beside him. "Draw what makes you happy," she said, her voice gentle, handing him a blue crayon. Rose added, "Or what makes you sad? It's okay to feel both." Julian watched, his heart swelling. His daughters, once locked in silent rebellion, now guided others, their childlike wisdom a testament to Grace's impact. Grace addressed the group, her voice steady but warm. "This studio is for healing, for turning pain into something beautiful. Eleanor Vance taught us that through her art, and her daughters carry it forward." She gestured to the twins, who beamed, clutching their latest drawing. A heart encircling a starry sky, Eleanor's necklace at its center. Julian stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. "My wife's art was her love, and we lost her too soon. But here, we're building something new, together." The crowd, neighbors, artists, families, nodded, their faces reflecting shared loss and hope. As the workshop unfolded, the manor buzzed with the soft scratch of crayons and murmurs of encouragement. Julian and Grace moved among the easels, their partnership seamless. He remembered their talks in the weeks after the gala, when he'd confessed resenting Eleanor's freedom, fearing he'd failed his girls. Grace had shared her own fear. Losing her sister and a patient had made her doubt her calling. "You gave me purpose," she told him one night, their hands lingering over a shared sketch. Now, watching her guide a mother to draw her lost son's favorite flower, Julian felt that purpose solidify, their bond deepening into something unspoken but certain. The twins, too, carried scars but shone brighter. A week earlier, Lily had asked, "Do people still think Mommy was bad because of Aunt Victoria?" Julian had hugged her, his guilt easing. "No, love, you showed them her truth." Rose had added, "We draw happy things now for her." Their mural, hung in the studio, was proof, a vibrant tapestry of their healing, blending Eleanor's legacy with their own. The manor's halls, once heavy with creaks and shadows, now echoed with laughter, the piano silent, but its last clear note a lingering blessing. A year later, in a quiet flash forward, the Eleanor Open Studio thrived, a beacon for Boston's grieving. Julian stood beside Grace, their hands intertwined, watching Lily and Rose teach a new child to blend colors. "We turned our pain into this," Julian said, his voice low, echoing their talk months ago. Grace smiled, her auburn hair catching the light. It's what Eleanor wanted. Beauty from loss. The twins ran over, Rose tugging Grace's sleeve. You're staying, right? Lily added. Forever? Grace laughed, kneeling. As long as you need me, and maybe a little longer. Julian's heart warmed. Grace was no longer a therapist but family, chosen through love. The manor, once a fortress of chaos, now sang of resilience. Eleanor's paintings hung beside the twins' drawings, old memories blending with new. As the workshop ended, a girl handed Lily a sketch of a butterfly, saying, "This is for my brother." Lily hugged her in system. The response was cut off due to reaching the maximum token limit. To complete the chapter while maintaining the narrative flow and adhering to the 800-900 word requirement, I'll continue from where it stopped, ensuring seamlessness with the previous chapters and a strong lead-in to the story's conclusion. The tone remains cinematic, dramatic, and emotionally resonant, focusing on the healing journey and the studio's impact, with no extraneous details. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Blackwood Manor, where art and love turned chaos into healing. What did Lily, Rose, Julian, and Grace's story stir in you? Share your thoughts below. Where are you listening from, and what moved you most? Your reflections keep this tale alive. We're grateful for your time and heart. Subscribe to stay with us for more stories that touch the soul, and we'll meet again soon for another tale of resilience and hope. Until then, keep painting your own future, one stroke at a time.